Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Grants and Contracts. We're so excited to have you today. I am your co host, Lainey.
And I'm your other co host, Abraham. And so it's good to see all of you joining us live here for this podcast. And we've got a lot of cool stuff to share with you today. And we're going to be talking about uh, what's killing your nonprofit. And we're going to address that from a very unique perspective. You may not even been thinking about it, but the number one reason what's killing your nonprofit is your board of directors and the lack of a board of advisors. So that's what we're talking about today. And so if you're joining us live, welcome. If you're watching this on replay, thanks for joining us and watching us on replay as well. And before we go too far, if you can go ahead and tell us where you're joining us from and give us the name of your organization, that'd be awesome. With that, Lainey, how was your weekend? Anything exciting happened over this past week between our podcasts here?
Yes, so I had a really exciting weekend. I was traveling. My I call her already my sister-in-law, but my future sister-in-law had just a little trip to celebrate her getting married in the upcoming month. So that was really fun, just getting to hang out. We ate some good seafood, oysters, and just have what I like to call girl time. So talking until late at night, like girls like to do. But I know, Abe, you had a very exciting weekend, way more exciting than I did. Tell everybody what happened this weekend.
Oh, must I? Well, I'm excited about this here. And some of you who are our frequent podcast guests, I just started playing pickleball about 4 months ago. And so I am completely addicted to pickleball. Pickleball has been my friend because I've lost about 12 pounds playing pickleball. It is my health and wellness plan now. But I play in a pickleball tournament this weekend, my first time ever in a pickleball tournament. And I did something amazing for all of us. So I received this second place for men's double, second place, and not just one, but I received third place for mixed doubles. So it was awesome. I had a good time. I mean, the whole time I was playing nervous though, because there were some really good players there, and I'm not that good because I just started. So I was a little bit nervous, but we got a few lucky draws. We played I played with my brother, and we played against the number two C team, and we're not that good, right? So, but we just kind of got really, we had in terms of skills, the other team was better, but we had a better strategy, and that's what we're going to talk about a little about today, right? It's about strategies and tactics. Sometimes it's not necessarily about performance itself. So one of our strategy is find the weaker player on the other side and consistently hit to the weaker player. Whereas most people they just hit, they just try to get it over the net. We Our main strategy is hit to the weaker player, and that's what we did. And so we were able to beat the number two ranked team in the tournament, and we made it to the finals. And we were actually winning using that strategy. We were actually winning. We won the top seed team. We won the first game. We lost. They beat us the second game, and in the third game we were winning 9-2, and we just needed two more points to get first place. But then they just like locked down. They came back and beat us. And so we were so close to victory, but it was still fun. I mean, I had a great experience. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, pickleball is a lot of fun, and I want it for all of us here. So
I am so proud of you and so excited. I know we talk about this a lot, but I'm still holding out for that GCA pickleball tournament, and we'll have to go. There's going to be two options. Either I bring my best team and you bring yours and we go head to head, or the other option is we just partner together to make the ultimate doubles team and then get to beat everybody else. We'll have to decide what we want to do.
Okay, all right. If you play pickleball before, put in the comment. Let us know if you play pickleball, or if you want to play, just leave a comment. Say, hey, you know what? Love to play pickleball. And if you're in the Metro Atlanta area, look me up. I would love to play pickleball with you anytime. So I play about right now. I'm playing about 3 to 4 times a week. So look me up and love to play some pickleball with you. But with that said, let's go into what we're talking about today here. And so today we're going to talk about one of the key reasons why your nonprofit is not successful, and that is because you have a board or a board of director that is non-functional, or a board director that you haven't really developed well, or you are the board of directors and there are people that's on there but they're really just dead weight. So we're going to be talking about how to develop a board of directors, the roles and responsibilities. If you are a board member, your fiduciary responsibility, what you should do as a board member to really help the mission of the organization. We're going to be talking about the four key characteristics of what to look for in a board of director, and then the responsibilities that as a board member, how you can really lend your hand to make it effective and support the nonprofit that you're part of. And then we're going to cover one other area, is how to build a board of advisor to enhance the work of the mission of the organization itself. And this is true for for-profit and nonprofit. We're talking about the for-profit side, but most of this conversation is around the nonprofit world. But having a effective board of directors, or in a for-profit world, is really your member directors or your board of directors if you're a C corp or S corp. So we're going to be covering that there.
Yeah, and I think another title for this podcast could have been a play on words, but don't let your board be boring. So we're tired of, boring, not working boards, not boards that are not doing anything exciting for the organization. We have seen firsthand how great a board can be and how great a board can enhance the organization and move that mission forward. And then we've seen the opposite side where a board can truly hold the organization back. You can have a great staff, a great ED, but if that board is not pushing the initiative forward, it's not going to be pushed forward. So how important it is, when you're picking your board members, when you're asking people on the board, and even when you're working on board development, which I think we'll kind of dive into that a little bit about some of the services we offer with that board development. But Abe, I want to ask you, do you have anything, just a story or anything crazy that has happened or that you've heard of? It doesn't have to be necessarily something that happened with you regarding a board, because there are some crazy stories out there. I know I've heard my fair share of them.
I have to be careful, but I've been on multiple boards before in nonprofits, and I've shared some good stories and some also some really um, ugly stories, because board members and ED, they're people, right? And there's dysfunction and things like that.
Yeah.
So let me start off with a very positive experience I had. Um, I was part of the Asian American Legal Advocacy Center, where the organization was founded in 2010. The first year budget was only $10,000. It was a new organization to really provide legal perspective and policy work for the Asian American community in the Metro Atlanta area. So that was the initial vision of it. And so I remember, I thought, okay, let me go and help out this organization. And so I was one of the board member there. We had to grow that organization, and we went from $10,000 first year budget to right now they're doing about $8 million in funding, from
Wow.
individual donors, from other foundations, and from different resources that's out there. And so it's grown from a smaller organization. Yeah, 8 million is still a small organization, but compared to where it started, in the period of time, and has made a lot of impact. It's helped a lot of Asian American get into policy work, but it's also trained individuals to become elected officials. So from that, there are public officials who didn't understand how to run for office, and so the work there went from um, let's form organization to really uplift the community so that their voice can be heard when it comes to policy work, when it comes to legislative work, and so forth. And then as we specifically one funding situation in that and how we got to one of our biggest funder was we identify a foundation that had affinity for the Asian American culture. And so there was this gentleman, he invented I won't name the foundation, but he invented the blood separating red blood cell from white blood cell. He invented that
Wow.
process. And so he's a mega multi, super wealthy. And his foundation at that time had about $700 million worth of money, and they put out money. And so we said we need to fundraise, but we have to fundraise from different foundations that loves the mission that we're about. And so first we talked to our board, and then we said, okay, board, who do we know that has a connection to this foundation? And then from that, there was a professor at Georgia Tech that had a relationship to someone at this foundation. So we use relationship to relationship to get to someone at this foundation. And so when the person said, yeah, I'm interested in meeting with you to talk more about what you guys are doing, she flew to Atlanta and, she flew to Atlanta to meet with the executive director, and I was the board chair at that time to meet with myself. And the whole meeting was the director of the trustee of the foundation. All she was asking about my life and how I was born in the jungle and eating off the land, living off the land, and the refrigerator was the forest that we would wake up every morning to, and how the running water is the creek running down, behind our village, and all she wanted to do was hear about these stories here, right? And so after the meeting, the executive director said, "Hey, I'm upset because you and I did get a chance to talk about the mission, our mission as an organization, and all the great programs that we have and the great programs that we want to have, and how she can help us with these programs." And I said, "Trust the process. You know, all this is about funding is about relationships." And I said, "Just trust the process. I understand you're frustrated because we didn't get a chance to talk about all the wonderful things that we want to do and how we need her to be part of this here." Well, after that meeting, because to me it's just relationship building. After the
Mhm.
meeting, the trustee reached out to us, say, "Hey, you know what? I really love what you guys are doing." And because we really didn't talk about what we're doing, but she can read, right? She can go to our website, read about what we're
Yeah.
doing and all that stuff. So she went to so she reached out and said, "Hey, I want to fund you guys." But she was testing us. So she said, "I want to fund you, but the first thing I want to do is you guys hold a fundraiser event, and then whatever you raise, I will match it." So that was our first way of working with this mega foundation. Since that initial event, we've grown. She's funded, I won't name how much, but she's funded a lot of money to the
Wow.
organization. And then she did one other thing that really helped this small nonprofit that I was a part of. She said, "We have a national agenda," and she as a big organization foundation, she doesn't want to fund 10,000 or 50,000, right? That's too small for her. She wants to fund things that have bigger impact.
Yeah.
So she said, "Abe, and to the executive director, more so to the executive director, she said, will you guys be open to being merging with a larger national footprint and rebranding from just being a local regional organization to a national organization?" So we wrestled through it, talked to the board, and so we made the decision that to grow what we're doing here, we're still a individual nonprofit, but now we have a strategic alliance, and we renamed the organization so that we can have a larger footprint and receive more funding and so forth. So yeah, so I was in that board there, seeing the growth from um, a board and executive director, going from $10,000 to millions and millions in terms of total funding. So it was exciting. So that was a very positive experience in that situation. I've also seen some really ugly situations where different organization where board members fight each other, or the board
Mhm.
members will fight the executive director, or board members will come and have their own vision separate from the vision and mission of the organization, and how that is devastating to the organization. I've seen where a group of board member decided to hijack the
Yeah.
organization and fire the executive director so they can appoint their own executive director. So I see all kinds of crazy things like that in the different volunteer work that I've done. But overall, the I love nonprofits because the work that they do is so important, and so that's really what this podcast is about, right? Grants and Contract podcast is about how do we support nonprofits, how do we support for-profit organization to be more resilient, to evolve and change, but also to get the funding and the contracts and grants that they want to pursue. So
Yeah, and I think too a big thing is, and you can ask somebody this, and the saying actions speak louder than words, but why are you on a board? So if you truly love your community, or you love what the organization does, that's a great reason to be on a board, because then you're going to want to further their mission. If you're wanting to be on a board for other reasons besides that, maybe your friends on the board, or I heard a saying once is that somebody had found out that people were recruiting people to come on this board, and they kept saying, "Well, it's the easiest board you'll ever be on." So people were like, "Oh, like we want to be on this board." Where that's not a good thing. Like, you don't want people sitting on the board because it's the easiest board you'll ever be on. You want it to be because either they really feel pulled to the mission, or they really want to help out their community, different ways like that. That's why I love to get anytime we talk with organizations about board members, there's different strategies to find board members, but one thing that I like to do is plug into other to your resources in your community. So if you have a local junior league, or a local rotary, or a community foundation, those are going to be great ways to kind of put out that board listing and find that board, because that those are people that are already interested in the community. They're already in some way volunteering. So they're more than just somebody that just wants to sit on a board. Um,
well,
what do you think, Abe?
let me expand on that a little bit, right? Because some people see, oh, well, if I sit on this board, then I can put it on my resume. I can put it on my LinkedIn profile. I can put it on all the different things, and so I
Yeah.
get clout from that, right? I get value from saying that I serve on a board. And yes, personally, there are some value, right? There's certain benefits that by being on a board, it helps you in your career. And then it can also lead from being on a smaller board to eventually a bigger board. And eventually some large nonprofits, they pay their board members. And so that may be a way of why you want to be on a board. But the side benefits is not the reason why you want to be on a board, right? You want to be on a
Yeah.
board because you just want to serve you, because you feel that you have value, that you want to contribute to the mission of the nonprofit. And oh, by the way, yeah, it helps you too, right? It helps you in terms of your own personal career growth and so forth. But it's really to give. If you're not there to give, I would say if you're just going to be there on an easy board and be dead weight, get out of the way, right? If you're a
Yeah.
board member and you're on this podcast or you're watching this podcast and you're dead weight, resign and let somebody else who really loves the mission to come and um, support the mission of the organization. If you are a board member and you have debt weight in there, get rid of those debt weight. If you're executive director and you're and you have debt weight, work to replace those people. And that's really what we're going to talk about here is uh, those. And now there may be some board members who they're just not equipped or who's just not educated on how they can be effective. And that's what this podcast is about also. So why don't we dive into a little bit some more details in terms of of what is a board of director, and we're going to talk about the difference between a board of director and a board of advisor also. So, Lainey, if you were to define a board of director, how would you define that there?
Yeah, so it's somebody that has a fiduciary responsibility to lead the mission, a group of people that have a fiduciary responsibility to lead the mission of the organization. And that just means that they need to be making decisions that are in the best interest. They need to be pushing forward that mission. And different boards, every board is different. So you're going to, like Abe just said, you're going to have some boards that are really heavily working boards. You're going to have some boards that we really would say that they, even though they're called a board of directors, they're more of a board of advisors. And a board of advisors, is someone that is kind of overseeing the board, but they're not getting into the nitty gritty. They're not making day to day decisions. So you have some boards that are very involved, and then you have some boards that are more overarching. And I think you can you start to notice that in an organization. First, I think one of the things is how often is the board meeting? If a board's meeting every 3 months or even, not monthly, they're probably more hands off. There's no way that they're going to be able to have a 3-month meeting that says everything that's going on in the past 3 months, because that's just not doable. But I think that every board is different. And when you start to dive into this, we're going to talk about a lot of ways to enhance your board. And once again, it's not cookie cutter. You're going to take some of these are not going to apply for you just because your board doesn't do things that way. Your board is functioning in a different way, and that's okay. That's the reason that every organization is different. And that kind of what makes this nonprofit world go around is that everybody has a different board. Everybody has different people and different people that bring different things to the table.
Yeah, and the board of director, that's a good definition of it there, Lainey. Good explanation there. The Whereas in a for-profit, you have shareholders. In a nonprofit, there are no shareholders. The board of directors are the caretaker, and the benefits of it doesn't necessarily go to anyone. The benefits of it are the mission, the clients, the people that you support. Those are the benefits, right? The benefits are, what you're doing. The recipients receive the benefits. Yes, the staff members, the exec director, they get paid a salary, and some of you who are um, staff members in a nonprofit, you're not getting paid the funding or the revenue or the salary that you deserve, because you do a lot of great work. But that's really, what we want to address, as how do you build an effective board of directors so that you can have the funding that you need, the revenue that you need, so that you can be paid for the work that you're doing. A lot of nonprofits just, are barely surviving, and part
Yeah.
of it is because it goes back to your board of directors, and how to structure that properly, and the roles of the board, so that you can get the funding that you need to grow.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we're going to talk about in a few minutes, what are some of those characteristics you're wanting when you're looking at someone on your board? And the greatest person that could be watching this, and if you're this person, put it in the comments if you're watching on replay, would be somebody that's just building your board. Because if you're starting from scratch, which that's not a lot of organizations, but if you're starting from scratch, it's easy to do that on the front end. It is a lot harder when we talk to organizations or we're talking to EDs or board chairs that they say, hey, we want to do a board overhaul, but it's hard. People are on different terms, they're rolling out on different times. So it's you can't just go in and say, I don't like any of y'all, you're leaving. That's not something you're able to do, but you are able to. What we've learned is that you're able to bring up your board maybe through a board development day, a board growth day, where, because sometimes I think we board members get a bad rap where we say they don't do anything, or, there's discourse about that. But I think the main thing is maybe they're not as educated of what they should be doing, or they don't know that there's more than just monetary giving, or that there's more than just um working an event. There's multiple, we always talk about wings to the plane, but there's so many different ways that you can be a board member, and how does that fit for your lifestyle, what you're doing right now. And that's what we're going to look at, is those different roles and responsibilities, because once again, everybody doesn't have the same talents. Maybe you're great at marketing, but someone else is really great at just stepping up to the plate and being there for the event, for registration, something like that. There can be different people for different tasks.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the specifics as it relates to the roles and responsibility of a board of director. Uh, we have this document here. We're going to give you the link so that you can use this as a guide. Now, again, just a little disclaimer: we're not attorneys, and we're not giving you legal advice in terms of a legal document here. But use this for education purposes. Although other folks have used this here in the past, but we're just providing for education purposes because we're not a law firm here. So if you do use it at your own risk, as our disclaimer. But so let's use this here. We're giving this away to you, no cost, just for hanging out with us here. The link will be given to you so that you can better uh, refine or tweak whatever documents you currently have or don't have. So let's talk about the legal and fiduciary duties. So the first item is the duty of care. The second item is the duty of loyalty, right? And the third item is the duty of obedience. What are your comments about these three main duties here, Lainey?
I think when they're put with these specific words, it carries a heavy weight.
Mhm.
So, when I hear these words, because duty of care is not as scary, and I don't even think loyalty, but it's that obedience. If you don't know those laws, if you don't understand compliance, that can be hard to learn. And especially if this is not something that's already been talked about, on that first board meeting and stuff like that. So that's where I think some really good board education can come in. But then just understanding that, I think the biggest thing is it comes down to doing the right thing. And I know that that is a gray area. Me and Abe have talked about this in personal conversations. What is the right thing? But just comes down to pushing that mission forward. And I I wondered this, and maybe you can answer this, Abe. Do you think that if people saw this roles and responsibilities, somebody comes in, they say, I want you to be on this board, it's so fun, whatever that is, and they saw this roles and responsibility, do you think that there would be less people on boards, that maybe it would almost scare them in a way? Or do you think that it would be the same?
If a potential board member, if they fully understand the legal and fiduciary responsibility that they're actually signing up for, then they would take it seriously, or
Mhm.
two, they may choose not to join the board. And so
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword, right? You want them to know their legal obligation, but if they fully understand it, then maybe you might not have that person join your board or something like that there. But I prefer that they fully understand their obligations as a board of director, and so that they can come in ready to help, ready to lift up their sleeve and dive in to really help the organization. Part of it is maybe the original founder of the nonprofit, who usually is the initial board chair and also is the initial executive director of the nonprofit. Now, keep in mind, just because you founded a nonprofit, you're not a shareholder, right? There's no shareholders. You may be the temporary executive director, you may be the temporary board member, but eventually you can get voted out of your own organization that you founded. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And so, because the mission and the organization is more important than one individual, but you also want a good working board so that no one is trying to oust you because is your vision, is your mission. You found it for a reason, so that they work well with you. And we'll come back and talk about some of those characteristics of what you to look for in quick second here. But yeah, as it relates to the duty of care, it has to do with in terms of using um, bringing in a board candidate that has good judgment, right? They make good
Yeah.
decisions, and and they have different characteristic, different capabilities, different expertise to come in. But yeah, I think the duty of obedience is also important, and then the duty of loyalty also is super important because if you have someone that they have their own personal interests of why they join, yes, a side benefit is you network with other key people in the community who's part of the board, and maybe there's maybe some side business, there may be some
Yeah.
friendship that develop out of it, there may be some other side benefits, but that's not the purpose of why you joined the board, right? Those are just side benefits. The purpose of it is not for personal gain. The purpose of it is for the organization to have gain. And so I think these three things here are, the any potential board member must fully understand their fiduciary obligation to the organization.
Yeah, and I think too, that's why you see a lot of lawyers on boards, business people on boards, corporate doctors, because their jobs hold a lot of these legal and fiduciary duties. So it's easily translated over. Not saying that good board members have to be something else, because some of the best board members I've seen maybe are volunteers, stay at home moms, where they really pour in their time and they really care about it. But I think it's important for, and I know we're going to move on, but it's important at the beginning that they understand their roles and responsibilities so that it's not a surprise, or it's not when they start talking about it, because so much in the nonprofit world, and it's this way for a reason, is things are hidden. So maybe when an ED comes in, they don't want to give the full story up front because it's going to scare people away. And I understand that, because, you're coming into a storm, so you got to weather that storm. But I think too, people would, the right person will care about that honesty and want to move forward with that, because they like a challenge. They like what they see, instead of being almost hidden from what's going on. So I think that there's two sides to that, but I think that this should be talked about more in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Equipping your board of directors from the very beginning is important, because if they don't understand what they're stepping into at the beginning, then that's where you have debt weight as an
Mhm.
executive director, and as a new nonprofit. If you bring in debt weight, that can be problematic, especially if they create a hostile environment for the rest of the other board members. So yeah, so let's go and talk about the governance and strategic leadership. So there is the mission stewardship, the strategic planning, and the program oversight. So these are some additional roles and responsibility of a board of director, a member there. And so you have to come in and say, okay, it's not. Let me say this here very clearly. It's not your personal vision, it's
Mhm.
the vision of the organization. So when someone originally founded the nonprofit, they had a vision of what that nonprofit is about and where that nonprofit needs to go. And the planning around all of that is to fulfill the vision and mission of that organization. So as a board member, you stepping in is not your vision. Keep that in mind. You're coming in, you're helping to fulfill the vision of the organization, not your personal vision itself. And let me speak to, I'll use a illustration. I have a friend, um, one of my best friends, but he can't keep a job. He would go from a job to a job to a job, and every time he said, "Hey, I just got a new job," I would say, "Okay, and sometimes it becomes a side joke. I say, "Okay, he's probably going to be gone in 3 months." And if he lasts longer than 3 months, I would take him out for lunch or something like that, right? So it becomes a running joke. He can't keep a job, and the number one reason, and I had to share with him the hard facts of why I feel why he can't keep a job, is when he goes into a job, he tries to take his vision and supplant the vision of the founder of the organization. And so then in that situation, it creates a hostile environment where now there's a conflict of vision. a conflict of mission, a conflict of goals. And so I said, you're the reason why they hired you is so that you can go and build their vision, build their mission, build their goals, achieve what they want to achieve. Not that you go and you try to replace your own ideas with their. Now you should introduce new ideas. That's important for organization to thrive. But if that
Mhm.
new idea doesn't align with what's existing there, then it's not your company. You're just there to fulfill that company's original goals. So
Yeah. So something that first off, your friend needs to be an entrepreneur. So he needs to create his own business so he can, you know, ride
mhm,
his own success. But something that, and I don't know, maybe you're in your experience, in my experience with board meetings, it's not done this way. And if you've done this, please put in the chat because maybe this is not a first idea. Also, somebody asked for the document link. We will be sharing this at the end of the podcast, so make sure to stay around. We'll be putting these links in the chat. So, something that I have learned taking away from my church. So, I think a church is a nonprofit, but I think that you can kind of get a lot of things about boards, organizations, whatever. So my the church I grew up in, how we had a mission statement, and our mission statement, I've never been in another church that had like a true mission statement. Maybe you had one but you didn't. We set our mission statement every single Sunday. So we would say, when we were introducing our programs, the mission statement was reaching and raising the next generation to live out God's truth. So it had everything we did was based around that mission statement. So if we were doing men's ministry, because we know that if you get the men in, you have like an 87% more likely chance to get the children in. So everything was about that mission. And I wonder if in a board meeting and even stuff like that, start the board meeting with your mission, your vision, and have everyone, memorize that so it's constantly in your head. That mission statement, so many times stuff will come up. And even though I no longer go to that church, I still I memorize that because so many times we said it over and over again. But I wonder if that would be almost a helpful thing, starting each thing with this is our mission, this is our vision, and everybody saying it.
well, that's a future class that we have to address. How to develop a vision and a mission statement
Yeah.
that everyone can. That's the vision has to be big enough. The mission has to
Hmm.
be the mission is really the purpose statement, right? The purpose has to be so important that people can rally behind it. The challenge with what you just shared, which is awesome, what you just shared, but the challenge is that most organizations have a very vague vision and mission statement that no one really cares about. In fact, I would dare to say that most executive directors can't recite the vision and the mission statement. I would dare to say that if there is a a board of directors with 5 members, that maybe only one might even just know the vision statement or the mission statement. And
Wow.
like for our organization, right, the Government Contractors Association, our vision statement is to create access.
Hmm.
Very simple, right?
Educate,
Simple.
facilitate, advocate.
Yep. And our mission is EFA, right? To educate, facilitate, and advocate. And so we simplify so that it doesn't matter who comes into our organization, that everyone understands our vision and our mission. One is if I'm the founder of the nonprofit and I don't even remember the vision statement,
Hmm.
guess what? No one else is going to remember the vision statement. So that's another class that we need to do in the near future. But coming back to what we're talking about here is, yes, the vision, mission, the values, all of that have to align as it relates to the board of directors. You
Yeah.
have to come in and step in to fulfill that role.
And I know that's another class, but I want to play devil's advocate. A lot of the organizations that I've worked with, I'm not going to say 100% all of them, but they use it in everyday language because that's they're wanting to push that mission forward, so they would say it. So it got to the point where when I'm working with organizations, I just happen to know the mission and vision not because I memorized it, but because it was said in everyday language, or it was we obviously I'm a grant writer, so I do have to know the mission and the vision because it's asked all the time. But I think that's a good, if you're not already doing that with your organization, and like Abe said, this will be another class another time, start putting it into everyday use, because that's how you're going to learn it the best. Yes, you can try to memorize it, but if you're starting to do that, and I think Abe will have to try this out at our weekly staff meeting. We need to start saying our mission and vision statement so everybody can be on the same page every morning and every week.
Hmm. All right, so we have three documents we want to share with you if you are just joining in with us here. The first document is a sample for a board of directors, mainly for nonprofit, roles and responsibility. And at the very end, when someone is joining your board, they read through this here and they sign that they understand that these are the obligations to the organization. So we do have this sample for you. Again, we're not legal experts, and so we're using this for training education purposes. But this document will be available for you to reference as well. So let's talk about fundraising. As part of the board of directors responsibility. Yeah, yeah. What have your experience been with board members related to this item number 4 here?
So I feel like I've seen it on a very sliding scale. So I've seen it where board members are amazing at fundraising. They don't care to go ask. They're more um, maybe hold places in the community to where they know a lot of people, they have a large network. So I've seen that side, and then I've seen the side where somebody said that the board has to give this much money, they give their money and it's done. They don't want to ask anybody else, they don't want to do anything else. So I've seen very wide varieties of it. um However, I think it's funny now, being in the nonprofit world, be working with organizations and talking to friends, people in my network. Do you know about this organization? Do you know about this? Because I like to share my organizations, and finding so many people I know have been on boards for years, and they've never told me about them being on a board. They've never, I never knew that. And so that made me start thinking, how many of these other board members, how many people do I know that are on boards that have never mentioned that they've been on a board for 5 years or something insane, just because they don't, I don't want to say they don't care, but it just, maybe they're not as open to sharing it and it's not been shared on social media or anything like that. So I remember my really good friend, she was like, I'm on this board. I was like, because I told her, I said, you would be an amazing board member because she has all the qualities of a great board member. She said, oh, well, I've been on this board, one board for many years. I said, I had no idea. So,
Yes, one of the executive director and the board of directors, one of your highest priority is to bring in funding for the nonprofit. It doesn't matter how strong the vision, how big the mission is to change the world or to change whatever purpose that you have as a nonprofit. If you have no funding, then you might as well just be non-functioning or a dead organization, right? So funding is really, it allows you to fulfill your mission. So your number one obligation to fulfill the mission is to fundraise. And as a board, if you're stepping into a board role and you don't understand that that's part of your responsibility, then now you understand that that is part of your responsibility outside the other fiduciary obligation. And so there are board members that are really gifted in terms of fundraising, and there are those that's not gifted at all. And you want both, right? You want people who are really good at fundraising, and you want people who are not good at fundraising, but they can contribute in other ways. And so the way, my suggestion in terms of the personal contribution is, there's two options here. One is you can actually say, hey, to be part of our board, we have a funding goal, and the funding goal, you can set whatever amount. It might be $5,000 a year. As a board member, your funding goal responsibility is $5,000 a year, or it could be $500 a year, and
mhm.
whatever, depending how big your organization is, it could be $500 a year. And you can and how you contribute in this funding initiative is up to you. You can just write a check, and that's one way of how you support from a funding perspective, or you can get funding from other people. And so if
Yeah.
you set a specific funding goal like that, it allows the person that's great at fundraising to go and do what they need to do, or the person who's really good at maybe bookkeeping, or maybe managing finances, or they may be good at compliance, but they're not really good at raising money. They can just write a check for $500 and they met the personal contribution part. So that would be my
But
suggestion in terms of that.
yeah, and I think too this gives an option for somebody because there's on your board you want all types of people, you want all jobs and um the whole fundraising thing, sometimes if you see that check, well, that could be that somebody can't write a $5,000 check, but it gives them the opportunity to, like you're saying, go out, go ask your business if you would like to be a corporate sponsor. That gives people the opportunity to be involved. And I think I always talk about this that I want to get the next generation, the younger generation, into nonprofit just because I think that they're not told about it enough, it's not talked about enough, and I think that that's one of the holdbacks is new people new in their career, they say, oh, I can't afford to be on a board, I can't afford to give to a nonprofit. You can do it in different ways. And I want to share this example and then I know we want to move on, but so I went to a middle school that it was called a charter middle school. And what that meant was you had to apply to get in, and it was really focused on volunteer hours. So not for me necessarily, like we were focused on the students volunteering, but also the parents. So as a requirement for your child to go to this school, the parents had to volunteer a set number of hours per semester. I don't remember what that hours was, maybe 10, 20 hours. So it could be that you went to volunteer at a ball game. It could be that you came and worked at the actual school, like doing copies for teachers. There was all different types of things that you could do. Well, there were some parents that if you work a full-time job, you were not able to come to the school during regular school hours. And if you couldn't do, a ball game or something like that, you couldn't do your volunteer hours. And I think after the first year, they realized that this was a problem for working parents. So they made a system where it was either you could volunteer or you could pay for hours. So each hour was, a certain amount of money. And, or if like you had done I'm just throwing out a number, your 8 hours, but you needed two, you could donate those extra 2 hours. And I think that could be a good idea to put in on your board. Either you need to volunteer this many hours which equals, the $5,000. So you can do either. You could half and half, or if you just say, I don't have time, I could do that.
Hmm. Great suggestion there. And again, it's all whatever you decide
Hmm.
when you're educating your prospective board members. um, then they understand that this is the expectation, and so if they understand that, they can step in to really add value in that way. If you don't educate them, if you're not equipping your board members, they just don't know what to do. So
Yeah.
if you're ed, I do want to mention quick comment on this here, right? Network leverage, leveraging the relationship, the different organization that you're tied to. The relationship is key, right? In terms of any organization. And I just want to share a quick story about how network is very important. I have a friend, and they want to start a new church. So what they do is they did a fundraising campaign and they raised over $4 million to start a church. And I'm not talking
Wow.
about uh, we're an existing church and we already have 10,000 members and we're trying to do a fundraiser. No, this is a brand new organization. They wanted to start a church and grow a church. But what they did was they got together a few people that said, "Yeah, I want to be part of this, of this new church here." And so they all came and they say, "We will go and help, do fundraising." And what they did was they created a list of, and this is a very practical, step, right? They created a list of everyone they knew that was tied to other organizations that had some type of grant or some type of religious affinity to support a startup like a new church. And so through that list, they came up with a plan of who should set up the initial meeting, what should they say, how they should go about presenting their vision and talk and creating a engagement plan. And they were able to raise $4 million to start a
Wow.
church. So pretty impressive.
So I think that their gift is fundraising. I spoke with someone not too long ago, and I actually asked her to join this podcast. So if you are joining or watching in, you know who you are. Hey, she was telling me, she was like, I just, you know, I don't have a gift for fundraising. Well, then she started telling me this story of how she bootstrapped $250,000 for something like in 2 or 3 weeks. Like, I'm talking about very, very fast got this money. And I looked at her and I said, I never want to hear you say that again, because that your gift is fundraising. You've got it. Some people have it, some people don't, and she has it.
Mhm.
And so I think too, I have another friend, she talks about this. She says that she worked at a bank, and so she's not scared to ask people for money. So maybe that's a good board member, somebody that worked at a bank, that they don't
Mm.
they don't care to go ask somebody for money. If they get told no, they get told no.
Yep. All right, so let's move on. And part of the board of directors' role is to, have oversight for the executive director. Um, and yes, that's important. The key thing I want to talk about this here is you as a board member, your goal is to not destroy the executive director, right? Your role is not to go
Yes.
there and say, "Hey, you know what? You're doing this wrong." Your role is to make them better, not to go and destroy them so they want to quit, right? Your role is to hold up the arms because it's a heavy role. Being executive director is hard work, and they
Yes.
mainly most executive director I know they do it not because of the money because most
Yep.
executive directors don't get paid what they're worth. Uh, they do it because of the mission, because of the purpose, and they do a lot of hard work. And so your role is not to go and nitpick and say you could do this better, or you're not doing this, or you're not doing that. Your role is to say, okay, let me go and see how I can help them to be better. How can I help fundraising? How can I volunteer a few extra hours to make their job easier? And if you do that, I promise you the executive director is going to shine, the executive director is going to grow, and they're going to be more effective, and that nonprofit is going to thrive. So your number one role as a board member is to go there and hold the arms of the executive director. That's my layman's way of saying it in that way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's funny. I've told this to multiple EDs. Um, and actually I told this to my grandfather. My grandfather is on a board for his HOA, and he's the board president. And I said, start writing down every single thing you do. And he's like, well, I do so much. I said, yeah, so you can show the board, because the board, they love to say, well, what do you do in a day? Well, come shadow an ED, and you'll see that they're running like a chicken with their head cut off. And sometimes they don't even get 5 minutes for lunch, and they're running around. So I wish we would have, when you were saying like, do not get on your board. I wish I could like scream and say that to everybody, because that's a hard job to be an ED, and you have to have a heart for it, because if
Mhm.
you don't have a heart for it, you're not going to stay, because it's hard. You're getting, you know, the board saying stuff to you, and then you're running your organization, you're the fundraiser, you're the developer, you're all of the roles in one, you're the grant writer. So, yes.
All right, we got other things to move to, but quickly we want to talk about meetings and engagement. You make time, as a board director, make time to attend the board meetings. And so as a nonprofit, one thing you want to do is you want to put a requirement of board attendance that they have to
Yeah.
attend over 80% of the board meetings or whatever the percentage is. It could be 90%, it could be 75%. Uh, and a recommendation in terms of meetings, if you're a small nonprofit and your board only meets every 3 months or every 6 months or once a year, you're not going to thrive as a nonprofit. Maybe you are thriving, but based upon all my experiences and the nonprofits I've seen, if you're not meeting at a minimum once a month, your small nonprofit is not going to thrive. So I would recommend meeting at least once a month, and the board member that comes and join you, they understand that they're meeting once a month, and don't make the meeting 5 hours, make it one
Yeah.
hour every now and then you might, have a working planning session that might be 2 hours, but busy and important people that want to be on board that can add value, they don't have 3 hours to come and be non-effect. It's that's not the best use of their time because they want to come and give and then move on, right? So
Yeah.
be strategic with that there, and then have them as a board member serve on some committees. And if you're a nonprofit, you don't have any committees, set up the committee, set up a fundraising committee, and appoint someone to be the committee chair. Set up a gala event, fundraising event in that way, and have a event committee and so forth.
Yeah, we love here at GCA, we love committees. We're quick to form a committee on anything, but it doesn't have to be you know, I think a committee has like, it sounds scary. It's not. It's just a group of people that are going to get together. Maybe you meet monthly, maybe you meet quarterly, but you're able to get stuff done outside of the big meeting, the big overall meeting.
Yep, and a few final things. Board your roles. Obviously, there's a chair, vice chair, secretary, and the treasurer, and so these are just normal. Every board, in a nonprofit must have these four roles here. Now, if you are the founder of the nonprofit, guess who's the board chair? That's you. Guess who is the vice chair? That's you. Secretary, treasurer, that's you. But if you are wearing all these hats, that means you haven't properly set up your board of directors. So that means you need to go and build your board of directors if you're new, because your bylaws should have a minimum of about 3 board members. So let's shift gears from board directors quick second and talk about board of advisors. So what would be the big difference between a board of advisors and a board of directors, Lainey?
Yeah, so the board of directors, they are overseeing, they're doing the work, they're more heavily involved. For the advisors, they are on it, they're giving advice. Maybe they're coming in to see things from a different perspective and be in for, maybe you want to have an advisor that's there for a financial advisor, or you want to have someone that's there for different roles and they're not as hands-on. They normally also don't meet as much as the board of directors because they are advisors.
Very, very, I love that definition there. Board of directors direct and they have a fiduciary responsibility, whereas the board of advisors, they give advice. That's
Mhm.
really the most simple definition. Now, why do you need both, Lainey? Why do you need both? If you have board of directors, why do you need a board of advisor?
Maybe because, so you don't want 16 people on your board of directors, but maybe how
Mhm.
I've seen it work is that you have terms on your board of directors, and those people on the board of directors, they still are involved. They love the organization, so they roll off to that advisory board and then roll back on to the director. So it's kind of where they're not going to stay on the board of directors for years and years and years, because there's sometimes there's term limit, sometimes there's not. And it also, maybe somebody wants to get involved, but they don't have the capacity to do the board of directors, but they still want to be involved. They still want to help out. I joke, I feel like I'm a board of advisory for all my friends. So I am a
Mhm.
single role person on the board of advisory, just giving out advice.
And and so it's a grooming. It's kind of like a board of advisor can be someone that very influential, very powerful, have great network, but they don't have time. And so they
Mhm.
they serve a kind of like a mentor. You go to them when you have a problem, but they officially have a board of advisor title, but they don't have to show up to all the meetings. They don't have to
Yeah.
they don't have to be on a committee. So you have board of advisors to supplement and to get more people involved in the organization and give them a actual title and a role so that they can actually do something meaningful to help out with the nonprofit, but they just don't have the fiduciary responsibility to attend meetings and to select a new board of new executive directors, or to maintain all of the legal obligations compliance. So board advisors serve as mentors. And so board advisor, you might want to have like maybe every 6 months have a board advisor meeting. If a board advisor, you might say, hey, as a board advisor, you're welcome to come and sit in on the board of directors meeting, but they're there as a fly on the wall, right? Unless the board of directors ask, or the board chair say, hey, as a board of advisor, do you have any comments on this topic? If they don't ask, then the board advisor is just there as a fly on the wall, because they have no obligation to be there, and they're not there for, that's not part of their job description as a advisor. But if they're there and they're asked, or maybe the board director may specifically ask a board of advisor to attend a meeting because they may have oversight, may have experience to provide specific support on a matter that they have expertise in. So what we did was, this is a role and responsibility plus a sample agreement, that if you were to add a board of advisor to your nonprofit, this is an example. And then the last topic before we wrap up here, I want to talk about some key characteristics that you should look for in a board of
Mhm.
director, or board of advisor. So let's talk about the first four. First thing you want to look for is, consideration for someone to join your board is expertise. They have knowledge and expertise in an area that you may not have, and you may be the founder, the executive director, but you're limited in terms of your experiences, right? So you want to look for someone who have expertise that you may not have, or additional to what you have. You also want to look for someone that has relationships. The average person has about a network of about 150. Now,
Wow.
very successful people, they have a network more than 150, but the average person is 150. So relationship is important. Now, why do you feel like, Lainey, if why do you think someone that have a network of 150 or more is important to be on the board of directors?
Because like we just talked about earlier, is you want somebody on your board that's gonna they're gonna kind of advocate for the organization. They're gonna tell people about the organization. We have a joke in our family that my mom and grandma could go anywhere in the world and they'll know someone, and it's proven true. We were in Europe. My mom's like, "Oh my gosh." And so, but she just talks to everyone. She knows everyone. She's a very talkative person. So those are great people to have on your board because they're connected. They're going to tell people about it and they know everyone, especially if they're from the community too. I think they're going to have connections with, if you are looking at a grant for a certain, maybe a corporate has a grant, they're able to call them up and say, oh, I actually know somebody that works there, or oh, I know somebody that could sponsor something for our gala or could help out. Connected people are going to be able to make those asks.
Yes, and in the for-profit world, we say that your net worth is tied to your network,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, in the nonprofit world, the same thing is true. We're not looking at net worth, but we're looking at funding, right? Your funding capability is tied to the relationships that you have. And then you also want somebody that have money. Now, this here, you're not asking the person that have money for their money, right? So make sure you understand this point here. When you're looking for someone to be on your board of directors, you want to look for someone who have money, but it's not their money that you're after. If
Yeah.
they have money, that means they know how to earn money. That means that they know how to get money. But
Well, I
more
think
than that, people with money hang out with other people with money,
that
right?
was that's what I was gonna say. People with money know other people with money. They. I have a story about this. We One of the organizations I worked with, they were so excited this day. I walked in and I was like, "What's going on? Why is everybody so excited?" Um, they, I think maybe someone on their board had went and played golf with someone who wrote a $40,000 check that day just because they told him about the organization. And we were like, they need to be playing golf every single day. Like they never need to not play golf. But it was just that it was an old friend from college. They played golf with them and it was somebody that they said, oh, here you go. And wrote the check and it came in. And that was insane.
Yeah, I've done, as a entrepreneur, I've done, different campaigns, raise money for different projects, different initiatives, nonprofits and stuff like that. I would say that probably over 90% of the funding or the money that I've ever raised for different purposes all comes from relationship and knowing other people with money. And it's really not a stranger that's going to give you money, but it's really people with money or people that have relationships with people with money that will give. And then the last component, we're wrapping up here. The last component is you want someone to have time. Because if someone may be an expert at something, but they don't have time, then it really doesn't serve you. They can't show up to a board meeting. It doesn't really help you, right? Sometimes people with time, there might be a semi-retired person that they might just be
Yeah.
working 10, 15 hours a week. And so they have a lot of time. They want to do something with their time. They want to give. And so you want to look for someone to have time. Now, in a perfect world, you want to find the person that has all four. But Lainey, do you think you can find someone with all four characteristics here?
I think you can, but I think that you should, and you might have a different opinion than that, but I think if you can get 2 out of 3, you're doing very well.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe find someone that have time and someone that have expertise, right? The person with money and the person, they're busy, so they may not have time. But the person with relationship, they may not have time. So if you just want to find of these four characteristics, maybe two of the four would be ideal. If you find someone with three, man, amazing. If you find someone that have all four, man, you need to get them on the board today.
You
Um,
need to be wining and dining them, never
yes.
letting them go.
And then a few other intangibles or other considerations. You want someone that works well. Works well. This supposed to be well. Works well with the board, with the ED.
Yeah.
You want someone that's loyal to the mission and vision, and then you want someone who's a cultural fit, and you want someone with good energy, right? Have you been around people with bad energy before, Lainey?
Yes.
It just sucks just sucks everything out of you, and you feel like, man, you're rowing upstream and not, you know, like I used to have someone, I won't name the person. I used to have someone that would in our meetings, right? This person will ask question like, well, why are we doing that? Not
Mhm.
because they really genuinely curious of why we're doing it. They just want to
Yeah.
poke, right? Or they say, why aren't we doing this other thing, right?
Mhm.
So someone present a solution, an idea for a solution, but they will bring up something else instead of hashing out what that idea is. They say, well, why don't we consider this other? It's not because they believe in the other idea. They just want to poke. And so a good fit, cultural fit, and good energy, and someone that is there to uplift the organization is important. And there may be some other very important considerations, but we just want to highlight a few good things to look for in a board of director or board of advisors. With that said, Lenny, you want to share with everybody what we're going to be doing next week?
Yes, so I'm really excited about next week, and I'm gonna send out an email, as well. If anybody drops their email, I'll include you in the email. But we are gonna be talking about, the hidden side of grant funding, sources, systems, and secrets.
Mm,
And we have some secrets, some things we've been working on. Some people already have heard about this if you've been following along with any of our classes and our podcast, but we're so excited for this. And we're excited too to talk about like the winning of grants. We talk about grant writing, but how do you find grants? That's what it's going to be about, more about finding funding, and we're excited for next week. So yeah, drop your email in the chat if you want me to send you the email. I'm also going to put the StreamYard link in the chat so that you can go ahead and register and you will not miss the podcast. And we thank y'all so much for staying around with us, or if you watched a playback, we thank you so much. I am going to be sharing with you the link so that you can get these freebies and you can watch the playback for the podcast.
yeah, so love to see all of you back for next week to join us where we're going to be sharing some secret stuff. We're going to be sharing some tools, some resources, some very, very important tactics in terms of how to grow your organization and how to source opportunities. So lots of good stuff that we're going to be talking about next week. So join us for next week. With that, if you're watching this on one of our channels, follow us, like, and subscribe. That helps us tremendously. We love hanging out with you, but
Mhm.
one way you can give back to us is to do that there, so that it helps out with our internal purposes in terms of really growing our network in the online community. And so, with that, Lainey, we are one contract away.
And just 1 grant a week, 1 grant away. We'll see you next week. Thank y'all.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us.